Hello everyone, welcome to Ruby on Rails course. We are talking about Ruby on Rails topics one by one. In this video, we are going to talk about a topic called active record, that is nothing but the model. Before getting into the video, why we are learning Ruby on Rails? Ruby on Rails is one of the open source framework. It is used to create your web applications very quickly. It is also called as full stack framework. It is used to create database backed web applications. It is following the concept called MVC, that is nothing but model, view and controller. Model is denoting your backend database, view is denoting your front end, and controller is the middleman. So using Ruby on Rails, you can able to create your web applications very quickly. So with this introduction, let me introduce myself. I am Krishnaveni, having 14 years of experience in this Ruby on Rails field, especially in web application development, software development and training. I have trained more than 800 students online. I am providing this latest syllabus to meet the industry standards. I am working with OdinSchool. This OdinSchool is a technology upskilling platform. We help you to continuously acquire new skills. So stay skilled and stay ahead with OdinSchool. In this video, we are going to talk about the basics of active record, migrations and validations. What do you mean by an active record? Active record is nothing but it's one kind of component which comes with Rails by default that will use the support the backend database concepts. So active record is a dedicated component in Rails to deal with the backend database migrations and then schema, files, etc. So this active record comes with Rails as a inbuilt configuration. So it is an inbuilt component which will support your backend database needs. So it is working according to the concept called ORM. So this may be new to you. ORM concept. Active record is working according to the concept or principle called ORM. So we are going to talk about that. ORM is nothing but object relational mapping. We are using an object oriented programming language that is called Ruby in Rails. So Rails framework is written in Ruby programming language. You already know that. So we are using Ruby. So the backend database we are going to use here is SQLite 3. So how this Ruby coding is going to be mapped with this particular backend database for writing your scripts. For example, we are using SQLite 3. How this particular object-oriented programming language is going to be mapped with this database. Usually, table-based databases. If you are storing your data in tabular column format, that database will be denoted as RDBMS. So you may know that RDBMS, that means Relational Database Management System. So that Relational Database Management System is denoting your backend database you are using. Here we are using SQLite 3. How this particular object-oriented programming language called Ruby is going to be mapped with the RDBMS called SQLite 3. So that is the concept behind this ORM. ORM means object relational mapping. So here it is. ORM means object relational mapping. So how is this concept is going to be worked? So how it is working in this particular Ruby on Rails active record. So whenever you are mentioning any object-oriented programming concept, the important three topics we will be calling as object, methods and then class. So if you are talking about object, that is the basics of Ruby, and class and methods, that is a very basic concepts of Ruby programming language. Whenever you are talking about any backend database table, you will be talking about this rows, columns and table names, right? Rows, columns and table names will be there in your RDBMS. That is nothing but Relational Database Management System. So usually your object will be mapped to the rows in your particular backend database. Okay, if you are creating a new row, that is mean to be creating a new object in that particular object oriented programming language. So if you are mentioning the column names, that will be mapped with the methods. If you are mentioning the tables, that will be mapped with the class. So this is the idea. Objects are mapped to rows, methods are mapped to columns, and class names are mapped to the table names. So this kind of concept, object is mapped to rows, methods are mapped to columns, and the class name is mapped to table names. This mapping is called as object relational mapping. This is how active record is handling your Ruby script with this RDBMS. That's why this ORM framework, otherwise this ORM concept is very important in terms of active record. So very simple, ORM. Okay. So this ORM is nothing but it's providing the that is the link between your object-oriented programming language you are using and the relational database management system you are using. So that is one of the theoretical concepts you need to understand. Next one is, what are the basics or what are the naming convention this particular Rails active record is doing. So you can see that kind of topics in this guides for your reference. So I just want you to read after the watching the classes as an assignment. You can go through this active record basics and you can able to understand the basics and then convention, what are the other topics included in this video. Okay. So here I want to talk about the naming conventions which are followed by this particular active record. Naming convention means you don't need to give any convention or any configurations or setup by default. Rails will take that automatically. The first thing, whenever you are creating a model, okay, with a singular name, Rails will automatically convert into plural. Okay, so if you are giving article, the table name in the backend database schema will be automatically generated as articles. This is because the table is going to have more than one column, right? So number of columns will be there. So automatically Rails will pluralize your model name, that is the table name. Article will become articles, line items will become line underscore item, deer will become deers, if it's mouse it will become the plural form mice, person means people, like that. This by default naming convention is used by this model or active record. It is using this pluralized format. Okay. So that is the first one. Second one, it will add the IDs. If you are making a table called user, the ID field, which is integer field, which will get added to your table by default. So you don't need to add any specific ID to your table. ID will be added automatically to Rails. So if it is easy for you to give the foreign key and primary key relationship over there. So that's why Rails will use the foreign key primary key relationship by default and it will assign the corresponding table and its ID by default. You don't need to add the IDs. Okay. Similar to that, whenever you are creating a model, it will add from default timestamp field. For example, created at, updated at. These two fields are called as timestamps, which is used to track your records. So which the record has been created, which that has been updated. So like that it will automatically store the hours, minutes, seconds, that date with time. This field will get automatically added. So whenever you are using these kind of active record, these naming convention and these kind of schema conventions, ID creations are automatically added by Rails by the active record. So you don't need to spend time on that. That will make your code much simpler. So we already have one SQLite 3 browser, right? So on the first installation itself, we have used this tool to open our database and check. So what I am going to do, I am going to open that particular database which we are using already. We are using one example project. Let me open the project. In that project, we can open the database with this editor called this SQLite DB browser for SQLite 3. Okay, so in this, from here you can open your corresponding code and you can able to check your DB. What are the things I have taught you right now? You can check it out. So we have this app. In this app there is a DB folder, right? Here you can find the database. So whenever you are using the database, you can see the ID, this field, that is the field I just now give you the idea of that. So ID will be generated automatically, and these two fields, created and updated, will be generated automatically. These two fields are called as timestamps. Okay. So right now, whenever you are adding the book, whenever you are creating the model name as singular, the model name will get pluralized. You can see that, books. Okay. So if you are creating any other table in the name student, it will get automatically pluralized at students. Okay. Books, students. Okay. So like that, you can able to see that names are pluralized. So these kind of simple migration naming conventions, and then adding the IDs, and then adding the timestamps are followed by Rails, which will make your configuration much simpler. So you can able to add your tables very quickly. That's why active record is following this kind of simple naming convention and other configurations. Next one, in model, using the model, what we are going to do. So we are going to do the CRUD operation. So we already talked something about the CRUD operation in the scaffold video. So scaffold is doing the basic CRUD operation. See, whatever, if you are learning mathematics, whatever problem you are using, either you will be doing addition, subtraction, multiplication or division. In the similar case, whenever you are using any web application, what is the 4 operation you will be doing? If you are doing anything with the backend database, what you will be doing? Either you will create a record in the table, or you can read it. Read means fetch a record from the table, or you will be updating the table record, or you will be deleting the table record. So nothing but the 4 operations are possible: create, read, update or delete. Okay. So that is called CRUD operation. So those CRUD operation we already talked about in scaffold workflow. So the scaffold will do this CRUD operation. All of these CRUD operations are based on the model name. Remember that. So model name is nothing but product. Okay. Then product.new, product.save, something like that. You will be using this particular name of the model. Model means whenever you are referring your code, here is your code. Open your code with your editor. Even if you are using that with your editor, that would be good. So for learning purpose, I am using this Sublime Text too. You can prefer some other editors too. That is RubyMine or Atom Editor or gedit, something like that. So I prefer this particular Sublime Text. Okay, now whenever you are looking at this particular model, it will be reside inside the app folder. Okay, so whenever you are look at the model, you can able to see that corresponding, book.rb, student.rb. These are the two tables we have created already. So whenever you are using this books table or student table, you will be having this particular books or student. So that name of the models will be singular, and it will be pluralized in the backend database. So whenever you are looking at the particular table, a class name will be added. According to the ORM, the class name will be mapped to the corresponding table name. So you need to use this class name .new. That is nothing but creating an object. We already talked about that. Whenever you want to create a new row, you need to use that model name .new. That is creating an object. Similar to that, whenever you are adding columns, you need to use the methods. So in your first migration, whenever you are seeing that migration file, you will be using a method called change. It will use a method called create table to create the records one by one from the table. So creation of the columns are mapped to the methods inside your migration file. And finally, the table names, whatever the table name you are using here, let us say student.rb. So this table name is mapped to a class name in Rails. Okay, so that's why we are using this ORM concept. You need to give student.new. That is the way. If it's a book table, you need to give book.new. Okay, so this is the code. Okay, book.new. Whenever you are creating a new record, you need to give book.new. Whenever you are updating, book.update. Whenever you are saving, book.save. Whenever you are destroying, book.destroy. Like that, we need to use the method. So as we already know about, these are the scaffolded code. You can see that book name, that is the class name used with all of the method. Book.all. That is nothing but the name of this class. Okay, book. Remember that. So whenever you are using it inside your controller, you will be using that with book.all, book.new, book.save. Okay. So book.update and then book.destroy. So these kind of methods are used with the model name. Remember that the model name should start with capital letter because the class name will always start with the capital letter. So class, the name is student, right? So it is started with capital letter S. So you need to use it with the student name S. So you need to make it with capitalized letter. First letter should be capital, not all the letters. First letter should be capital. Whenever you are using it with the controller or some other places, you need to call the class name .all, class name .new. So that is nothing but the book. Okay. So that's why all the CRED operations, create, read, update or delete, the CRED operations will be used with the model name. Remember that. Okay. So the CRED operations are nothing but related to the models, which will the basics of create, read, update and delete operations are taken place based on the model you are creating. Okay. So that's it about this particular active record basics. Next one, we need to talk about one more important topic called validation. Before that, let us talk about one more simple concept called migration. Then we can get into the validation. Migrations, we already know whenever you are creating a Ruby model, Rails model, the migration files will be created. What do you mean by a migration? Migration is nothing but the meaning of the word moving from one place to another or moving from one to somewhere. So here migration means whenever you are adding the DB, your migrations file will be generated. That means whenever you are adding a database, the corresponding migration files which will hold the structure of the table, otherwise schema of the table, will be generated. You will be adding your migrations or structure for your table over there. If you are using any other backend database, let me say I am using this backend database of Oracle and I am moving it to my production environment, I am moving it to my test environment. Like that, whenever you are moving from one environment to another environment or one system to another system or one database to another database, the structure is going to be the same, but the database will maybe get changed. So in that situation, your table structure and your schema should be the same, right? At the time, these migrations files will be helpful. Whenever you are moving your database or your application from one system to another or one environment to another environment, these migrations files will be holding the structure of your table. So without changing the table structure, you can able to recollect all the schema of your table. Okay, so that's why this migration name implies moving from one place to another, moving from one source to another source. In terms of Rails, moving from one environment to another environment or one system to another system, something like that. It is denoting your on the move. Okay, it's denoting your moving point. So that's why the files are called as migration files. Okay, so migration allow you to use some Ruby description language, that means DSL, to change your tables. So usually whenever you are creating a migration model file, the migrations will be generated automatically. So suppose if you are using a command prompt, let me say Rails generate model name book. Okay, if you are creating this particular model, the corresponding migration file will be generated in your DB app migrate folder. Okay, so like this it will get generated. So in this particular book, okay, this migration file, you will be giving the structure of the table. After that you will do rake db migrate. So these points we already know. So this migration file will be generated based on the model you are creating. Suppose if you want to add one changes to the table. For example, we are having a table called book, right? So in this book table, there are 4 fields: ID, name, author and then timestamps. So I want to add one more field to this table called books. Okay. So whenever you are creating a model, that is okay. If you want to change the structure of this table, otherwise if you want to give another columns, or if you want to change any column, if you want to delete any column, altering the table, I am talking about the alteration of the table. A table is already exist, you are going to change the structure of the table, or you are going to add a column, or you are going to rename a column, or you are going to remove a column. How you can able to do that? If I already have one migration file, if I go directly here and adding the columns means that is not correct. Okay, if you are going to the already existing migration file and if you are adding the columns means that is not correct. So what you need to do, you need to create a migration file alone. Please listen, you need to create a migration file alone, okay, to change these kind of tables. So how we can create a migration file alone, is that possible? Yes, it is possible. There is a separate command for that. Using that, you don't need to create any more model file. You just created only one migration file and you can add the changes to the table which you want to do. For example, we are having two tables right now here. One is, let me open one. Yeah, one is book table. Okay, in this table, what I am going to do, I am going to add a column called, I have two columns right now, name and then author. So I am going to add a column called year. Okay, that is the year of the book. And one more thing, I am going to add or rename a column. So in this particular table, I have a name called name, right? Name and then author. Okay, so I am going to add a column to the book, and I have one more table called student, right? What I'm going to do, to this table, let me open the student table. Here I have name and then age. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to rename this column. It's no name, right? So I'm going to rename it as student underscore name. Okay, and I'm going to delete these timestamps from here. I don't need this timestamp for the student table, so I want to delete it. So like that, I want to do some changes to the existing table. Two changes I need to do. One is I am going to add a column year to the book table. One more table is there, that is called student. Okay, to this student table, sorry. So to this student table, I need to rename a column. Okay, remember, rename a column. There is a name. I am going to rename it student underscore name. Okay, similar to that, I am going to delete the timestamp. So like that, I am going to do some kind of changes in my database structure. So how I can do these kind of changes from my migration file without creating any models. So remember, whenever you are adding the model, migration files will be generated. If you want to alter the structure of the table, okay, altering column or adding a removing column, renaming a column, anything, you need to create a migration file separately. Please remember that. So whenever you want to create something, you need to get into the folder structure. We are using this particular path. The name is, this is the app name, Grey Campus, and we are going to use that. So right now, what you need to do, create a migration file. So we have already generated model, right? Similar to that, the same command you can use for creating your migration. Rails generate migration file name. You can give any name, okay, to understand. So keep it somewhat in the understandable format, not in any short forms or any shortcuts. Okay, so changes to tables. So like that, I have added changes to tables. That is my migration file name, because whenever you are creating a migration, you need to give some name, right? Changes to tables. So I have book table and student table. I am going to do some changes for that. So that's why I have given changes to tables. Like that, you need to give a meaningful name. From the name, you can understand what you are going to do with that. Okay, remember that. Whenever you are creating a migration, please don't use any shortcuts or any names. You just use some names with underscore with all small case letters. Remember that, okay? That is one of the best practices of Ruby name. Whenever you are naming a Ruby file or anything, it is better to use all lowercase letters with underscores to give the space between the names. Okay, remember that. So whenever you are creating this Rails generate migration file name, it will add only one migration file. Remember, it won't add model file or anything. It will add only one migration file to your database, I mean that DB folder. So using that migration, whatever the changes you want to do, for example, in book table, I am going to add a column. In student table, I am going to rename a column, and I am going to delete the timestamps too. These changes you can done on your migration file. So via the migration file, at a time you can do changes with any number of models, not only 2 tables, not only one single table. You can alter the tables. If you have 10, 100 tables also, if 100 tables also, you can able to 10 or 100 tables, you can able to change those tables from a single migration file. That is possible. Okay, so this migration, this command will generate a migration inside your migrate folder. The location is db migrate. Okay, so right now, yeah, it has been generated. db migrate with some 14-digit number. I already told you this is nothing but the 14-digit number is nothing but 2020 0727. That is the date, time, hours, minutes, seconds. Okay, that is nothing but the timestamp. This is used to track the migration files, which migration we are currently using. So now the migration file has been generated. Right now you just open the file. Here you can add the changes which you want to add. First of all, I am going to add this particular add column. You may wonder how I am adding this column, okay, without referring anything. I will tell you where it is and I will show you what are the available methods like add column. Okay, add column year to books table, and you need to mention what is the data type. The data type is integer. Okay, so add a column called year to the books table. Okay, add column to the year, add the column in the name year to the books table with data type integer. You may wonder where I can refer this kind of method. What are the methods available like add column? So those methods are available in this active record migration. This guides will show you what kind of change methods you can do. For example, adding a column. Yeah, so adding the column, okay, to corresponding. What are the other methods? I will list out. Yeah, here are the methods. Okay, adding a column, adding a foreign key, adding an index, adding the reference, adding timestamps, changing the column, changing column null, create join table, create table, disable extension, drop join, extension, drop table, remove, rename index, like that. Lots of methods are available. So we are going to use this add column as a sample. I am going to implement 3 methods right now. Add column. So it will take, it will goes to books table with year and the corresponding data type integer. We are going to add a column to the books table with year, the name is year, and it will add the data type with integer. Okay, that is the first change. Next change I want to do is I need to rename the column in the student table. Okay, so instead of add column, you add rename underscore column. Okay, and to the students table, not books table, students table. What is the old column name? It is available in the name to student underscore name. Okay, so the existing column name is name. I am going to change it with student underscore name. That's it. So renaming a column will rename some old name to new name. Okay, so in the student table right now the name is as name. I am going to change it as student name. That is renaming a column. And the third one, remove underscore timestamps. I am going to remove some timestamps from students. Okay, so that's it. So 3 methods: adding a column in book table, renaming a column in students table, removing the timestamps from the students table. So these are the 3 changes I am going to do. Now first let me show you what is the things we are already have. Books is having ID, name, author, created and updated. I am going to add a new column called year, and students it's having ID, name, age and created. I am going to change this name as a student name, and I am going to remove these 2 timestamps fields. Okay, these are the changes I have requested. So remember, whenever you have added the migration file, don't forget to migrate to your backend database. So you need to use rake db migrate. So whenever you are using this, it will migrate it to the backend database. Remember that. Whenever you are adding a model file or whenever you are creating a particular migration file, you need to run this command, rake db migrate, or you can use this particular migrate. So now you can get the confirmation migrated. So the changes to tables are migrated right now. So this is the old format. Now you just go and refresh. Okay, you will be getting the new format. Okay, so now year has been added here to the books table, and the second one, student name. Okay, name has been renamed as student underscore name, and these two timestamps has been removed, created and updated it. Okay, so if you are getting this migrated message means you are success. That means there is no pending in that migration, or you will be getting error messages. Okay, so this error messages shown up means the migrator will be reverted, and it will be reverted back to the older version. You need to change the syntax in the migration file, and you need to come back. If there is any error, you won't get this message migrated. Right now, you can see a migration has been done with the help of a single migration file. Okay, whenever you want to add anything to a column, add a column, rename a column, remove a column, or any kind of changes to the database, remember that you need to use this particular this migration files. Okay, not from model file. Once migrated file cannot be touched again. Remember that if you are doing this migration and you already done with the command rakedb migrate, hereafter if you are going to change anything in this file, that won't reflect in your database. So you don't need to do you cannot touch once migrated file. Again, if you want to do any changes, create one more migration file and add the changes. Okay, so make sure you are doing all the changes in a single migration file before you are running this command called rakedb migrate. Once you have run this command, the files will get migrated. After that, you cannot add any changes to the existing migration file. If you want to add any more changes, you need to create one more migration file and you need to add that. Okay, so that's it about the migration. You may wonder what these kind of timestamps, which is where it is used. So there are 3 migration files up to now. In your backend database, you can see a table will be there in the name schema migrations. So that will show up this 14-digit number for tracking purpose. So right now we have 3 migration file. The current latest version is this 2020 something today's file. So like that you can find out the 14-digit numbers are nothing but the timestamp which will be stored in your backend database for tracking purpose. That's why each migration file is preceded with this particular 14-digit number. Okay, that is the idea. So that's it about the migration files. It is very easy. What are the available methods? We can do it with this particular change method. Lots of available methods are there. You can try them one by them. If you want any reference for them, you can able to refer from here. Okay. So I have added 3 methods for our reference. Okay. So that's it about the migrations. Very simple to use. Next one, we need to talk about validations. Okay. After migrations, you can add validations. What do you mean by a validation? Validation is nothing but we are making sure the data you are entering via the model, the form. Whenever you are getting the data from the user, maybe we talked about form helpers to design our form, right? From the form, you will be getting the data from the user. So for example, login form will be having your email ID and password. Similar to that, your sign up form will be having the email ID, password, captcha, and then mobile number, biodata, everything will be there. So whatever the information you are getting via the form will get stored in the backend database. So backend database is used to store your data. But we need to make sure what are the data stored in the backend database should be verified one. That means you need to store only valid data in the backend database. Okay. So validations are helpful for that. Why we are going for validation? Validations are ensure that only valid data is stored in your database. So we have lots of hackers right now in the web application field right now. Lots of malfunctions are happening. Lots of other threads are there. Threads means lots of vulnerability and security issues are there in the web application. So banking websites, other important websites are facing lots of issues with the security. So that's why we need to make sure whatever the data you are getting from the user should be valid. It should be in the valid format. It should be in the correct format, and it should not be a null record or nil or null empty records. We need to make sure only the valid data gets stored in this particular validation. So that's why we are using these kind of validations before storing the data into the table. Okay, how we can use this validation? See, validation should be used with your model file. So it cannot be used with your migration. It cannot be used with any other techniques. It should be used with your model file. You have a model file in the app folder, right? There you need to use that. How we can do the validations then? So whenever you are adding any wrong field, let us take an example of Facebook account or Gmail account, anything. So whenever you are adding that particular any data to any forms, okay, if you are adding a wrong information, it should give you that particular error messages. Okay, so let me take one example of that, Gmail or something. So before that, I want to show you the forms, the Gmail forms, where you can find out the error messages. Okay, so I'm going to log into my account. Okay, so when I give wrong password, it will tell you this error messages. How this error message is coming? Because of the validations we are using over here. Okay, because of the validation we are using, the error messages are coming from your backend database. So active record is checking and it is giving your error messages. So these error messages entering that particular user to be logged in, or it is avoiding the unnecessary data to get stored in your backend database. That's why we are going for validation. So how we can implement these validations in our Rails application? So as I mentioned you need to write it in your model file with keyword called validates. Okay, this validates keyword is used to validate your input. So you can use different scenarios or different kinds of validation helpers which are available in your Rails application by default. So for example, whenever you are login or whenever you are creating an account, for example, let me get into the create forms of this Gmail. Okay. So let me get into the create an account. So whenever you are doing sign up for application, okay, you can get these kind of forms from Google. So whenever you are entering your wrong informations or anything, it will do lots of kinds of validation. For example, if you are leaving this empty and then submit, it will say enter first name. Then first name cannot be empty. Okay. If I give the already available username, okay, then it will say this email ID is already there. Okay. If I misuse that password, I mean if you give wrong password confirmation, then it will give you these kind of things. Password should have 8 characters. So like that, in a single form we can do variety of validations. So you can do different kinds of validations for each purpose. For example, checking your email uniqueness, for checking your password confirmation, we have different kind of helpers with the validation. Okay, so let us check that. Before that, as I mentioned you need to write it in your corresponding model file, okay, with validates keyword, and give the columns which need to be validated and the validation helper, and you can use that. So lots of validation helpers are available. We are going to use them one by one. Okay, in our table, what we can how we can do the validation. Let us take our book table. Okay, so in this book table I am going to add some validations for ourselves. Let us add the checking of the presence. We need to check whether any value is present or not. So you can check validates, the name field is there with presence. Presence means it will check any data is entered or not. So here in this Google form, if you are not entering any values, means it is telling you error message, right? So similar to that, if you want to get the same thing, if you are entering blank, otherwise if you are keeping the field empty, it should tell you this, you should use this particular field to shade the record. Like that, if you want to get the error message, you can use the presence. Similar to that, few form helpers are available. Let me show you. Before that, okay, so acceptance box or accept terms of service. So you may see acceptance of terms of services in some of the pages earlier. Right now it is not there. In some places, if you see terms of service update or something will be there. I will talk about that. So here, whenever you have the first helper called acceptance, okay, you need to give validates terms of service acceptance true in your model. When you give that, if your particular page is having some pages like this, I accept the terms of service. If you forget to click on this checkbox, then it will give you error. Okay. So if you want to check whether the checkbox is being checked or not, you can use this particular helper called acceptance. Okay. This is one kind of variety of validation you can do. Next one is confirmation field. If you're having a Google account, you have a password field, right? Let me say I have entered this password and I'm entering another password, which is the confirmation field. But if it's wrong, then it will give you the password did not match. The email ID does not match. Like that, the confirmation field need to be checked, right? So at the time, you can use this confirmation field. Okay. So that is another helper. Similar to that, exclusion. If you want to any particular value to be excluded or it is reserved, okay, you cannot use that, means you can use this exclusion. For example, if you are using some kind of domain names, let me say www or US or CA or JP, these are reserved keywords which cannot be used with your application. At the time, you can use the keyword called exclusion. So you can give that exclusions inside this particular block of code, so that will get excluded. Okay, it won't work. If you are giving that value, it won't allow you to enter the value. Okay, if you want to exclude some value, we can use that. And then format checking. Format checking means you can check the format of your input. For example, here email ID is there, right? I am entering one wrong email ID, 11111 something. This is not the valid format of your email, right? So at the time, it will tell you error. So I am entering correct details, but my email format is wrong. Okay, then it will tell you this username has to be have A to Z character and it should have 8 character. Like that, it is telling you the format of the email, how it should be there. Okay, so that kind of format checking can be used with this format helper. Okay, you can use it with the some kind of regular expression coding to check your whether your input is good or not. Okay, that is called format checking. So for that, you can use this helper called format checking. Okay. And the next one is inclusion. Inclusion means if you want to include any values, only those values can be included. For example, if you are having a size field, only 3 values are possible: small, medium or large. Okay, only 3 values are allowed, means you can able to use this inclusion. Okay, apart from these 3 size, no other third, otherwise 4th or 5th values cannot be added. In that kind of things, you can use the inclusion. It's just opposite to the exclusion. We are giving only 3 included values. Okay. In that kind of scenario, you can use this inclusion helper. Next one is length checking. For example, the same thing you can take it. If I give only 4 characters for the password, it will say please use 8 characters. So it is counting each and every character and it is checking the length, right? So that kind of length checking can be done with the help of a helper called length. Validates length minimum 2. So the minimum length of the character should be 2. Like that, you can check the length of your existing record. Next one is numericality. If you want to check any integer value, for example, your date of birth or year of birth should have only the valid stuff. Let me say, and the password is 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. If you are entering your mobile number or something, okay, if you are entering your mobile number or something, it should have only this particular let me go to the next page. Okay, if you are trying to add a mobile number or any other number which should be a numerical value. For example, it should be integer value. You cannot add any string or to that. For example, phone number, right? I cannot add these kind of numbers. Whenever I give that, it will tell you this mobile number is not good, because that should be a numerical value. Okay, this particular phone number should be numerical value, not any string or any other value. At the time, you can use this numericality checking. It will check whether the input field is a number field or not. So presence we already seen. It will check whether the field is there or not. If it's not present, it will give you message. It should be empty. It should not be empty. You please enter value. Similar to that, we have our own methods as well. Validates with. If you don't want to use any of the available helper, and if you want to use on your own, you can write with validates with, and you can call your own validation methods too. Okay, that is also possible. Like that, Rails is providing variety of validation helpers to check your inputs before storing it in the database. You may wonder, okay, these kind of validation helpers are there. How to implement that? There are two steps. Okay, first you need to initiate the validation, or you need to declare the validations in your model file. Remember that. Okay, like this, you need to use it with validates keyword, and which field we need to be validated, and what kind of validation helper you are going to use, and true. If you are giving this one, that corresponding name will automatically get validated whenever you are trying to submit the form. Next one, every validation helper will give you some kind of error messages. Default error messages will be given up. For example, presence. So if you are using this presence, if the field is not there, active record by default, it will give you a message called cannot be empty. Okay, your field cannot be empty. So this is the one. It's not empty. So this error message will be given by active record by default. What is your next step? The active record is checking for the corresponding field name. If it's not present, it will automatically give you the error message. You need to display that in your form. So we have already added the scaffolded form, right? So in your books, this books is a scaffolded one, and your form is already there. So if you look at the line number 2 to 12, you can see if there is any errors in the book, it will tell you this error messages one by one. Books.error messages, it will be taken with each book, because more than one errors can be there at a time. So it will be taking up the message one by one, and it will be displayed this code. As it is a scaffold code, Rails has already added the error block automatically. Remember that. If you are using on your manually, you need to add this error block. This is the error block code, which is used to display the error messages which are coming while you are trying to submit the form. Okay. So two steps you need to do. First, initiate the validation in your validation, in your model file, and display the corresponding error messages in your corresponding form wherever you are getting the input from the user. So in the corresponding form, you need to display the error block. Okay, as it is a scaffolded code, the error block code is already there. So you need to declare the validation. You need to display the error messages in the corresponding form. So right now I have added only one validation. Let me add a few more validations. Okay, let me check the length of the, for example, length. Okay, length of your name. So validates name, length minimum 2. So for example, this one. Okay, validates name. The minimum characters of book's name is 2. Okay, similar to that, I am checking the one more thing. Let me check. Yeah, this one is uniqueness. So if you want to check the uniqueness of your existing email, you can check it out. If you want to have only the book name to be unique, unique means the name should not get repeated. Okay, so the name of the book should not get repeated. Then you can use the uniqueness method. For email, it cannot be repeated, right? For email ID, account number, there should be a uniqueness. For each user, there can be only one email ID. Similar to that, if you want to check these kind of uniqueness, you can able to use this uniqueness field. So similar to that, you can check author field also should be there. Okay, author field should be there means you can check the presence for author field. Not only one field, you can add multiple fields as well. During the same validation itself, you can add multiple fields, okay? Name, author, something like that you can add. So as of now, I have added 4 error messages, 4 validations. So let us run this app and check how this validation is being worked. So I have added present should be there for book name, present should be there for author name, the length of the book name should be minimum 2 character, the book name cannot be repeated. So these are the 4 different kinds of validations. I want to check it right now. So let us check this one. So before that, run the app. So whenever you want to run your application, don't forget to open your localhost :3000. That means start your Rails server, then add this particular corresponding books table. So now I am going to get into the books page. Now I am going to add a new book for us. So what is the book name we can give? Let me say, I didn't give any book name and I am clicking on create book. Sorry. So let me click on create book and you will be getting 3 error messages. What are the error messages are coming up? 3 error prohibited this book from being saved. Name cannot be blank. Okay. Name is too short. Author cannot be blank. Why the name cannot be blank is coming? Because this name presents true is checking over the validation. What is name is too short, minimum 2 character, because we are checking the length of the character with minimum 2 character. Why the author cannot be blank? Because the author name should check the presence by its own. So suppose if you are entering all the details, let me say book 1, author 1. So this book 1 is already exist. Okay. So it will tell you the name has been already taken because we are checking the uniqueness over here. Okay. So can you able to get why this is coming? This is coming because this particular error messages are being triggered by your active record. Whenever you are writing these kind of validations in the corresponding book table, it won't allow you to store a record until you are giving the proper value. Let me give some other value, Google. Okay. When I create the book, now it will get stored, book 11. Okay. So rename the book and store, it will store successfully. Otherwise, it won't allow you to store any records to the book table. Okay. So that's why we are doing these kind of validations to make sure these kind of validations are allowing only the corresponding valid data to be entered into your database. Okay. So very simple case. Okay. You can simply use with 2 steps. Declare the database, declare the validations and show the error block messages in your corresponding form file. So as it is a scaffolded code, it is already there. Okay. So that's it about the validation. Validation error messages will be come by default whenever you are adding. So you don't need to add any of your error messages. If you want to add also, you can customize your error messages as well. That is also very simple. The error messages will be coming up by default and it will be displayed worldwide. So like this you can do the validations. Okay. Very simple topic. That's it about the active record validation. What about the remaining topics in this Rails? Because these are the 2 important model topics you need to cover. What are the other topics? So the next one we need to talk about this corresponding other validations and other topics. That is nothing but association and callbacks. So we are talking about the models, right? So sometimes we can give the relationship between the tables. That means you can give one-to-one relationship or one-to-many relationship or many-to-many relationship. So mapping, those kind of relationship between the tables can be used with the concept called association. That is also one of the concept in Rails models. Another one is callbacks. We have written the validations in our model file, right? Similar to these, you can add some extra options from your model. Apart from the CRUD, you can add some extra operations from your model. Those kind of extra triggering methods are called as callbacks. That is also one of the important topic in Ruby Rails models. And query interfacing. So we are using book.new, book.save, book.update, book.find, some kind of inbuilt methods for the CRUD operations, right? So similar to that, instead of the raw SQL queries, you can use inbuilt SQL methods which comes with Rails by default. Those methods will save your time instead of writing your query. So those topics are called as query interfacing. So whenever you are using methods instead of the SQL queries, those are called as query interfacing. So these are also associated topic of this Rails models. Okay. So relationship and then callbacks and then query interfacing. You can extend your knowledge by reading that kind guides.rubyonrails.org. This is the official website, right? You can get those kind of examples and then those kind of references from over here. Okay, but the important topics are migration and validation. So we have seen how to do the validations, how to do the migrations in this particular video. So after watching this video, as an assignment, you can take the validations and callbacks in your app and try this. Validations and migrations in your app. Try the same. Okay. Anyway, next, let us recall what we have learned. So in this video, we talked about the active record basic concepts like ORM, naming convention, and something. And we have talked about migrations and we have talked about validations too. After that, associations, callback, query interfaces are other topics in models as well. So thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. So subscribe to our channel, watch the video, share it with your friends and make use of all the available resources. So stay skilled and stay ahead.